Surveys. What is a survey? What is a survey?
You answer questions.
Yeah, you answer questions, right? Now, let me ask you this question. People give surveys all the time, right? Thank you. You already answered the question. I answered. So they give people give surveys all the time, and they're very annoying to some people, depending on what they're talking about, right? Not all surveys are annoying, right? There are no surveys you can fill out, such as you like. What's your favorite artist or?
My favorite artist?
Yeah, like singer, song, band, or whatever. To go to a concert, you gotta have somebody that you just.
Cody Johnson.
So like if Cody Johnson, so if they said we'll let you fill out this survey, you win tickets to this Cody Johnson thing, you would do it? What if it was about? What if it was about Cody Johnson? You don't know anything, but he's your favorite. That's so weird. Anyway, so but here's my point.
They're like $20.
Here's my point though. Generally speaking, when we do surveys, you either feel one way or the other about it, right? Either you want to fill them out or you don't want to fill them out, right? There's never really anybody that's in between on those type of things, all right? So let's talk about surveys. Start here first. Why do we do surveys? Well, we use surveys first off to collect data. Good. So these are used to gather or collect and the reason we're collecting this data now is because we want to learn something about, we want to take this smaller sample. So we want to use a smaller sample to infer things about a larger population. Like, for instance, Cody Johnson and his fans. We may only look at 20 of them, right? He got more than 20 fans, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. We may look at 20 of them and try to infer that about the other 200 fans that he has, right? He probably got more than 200, huh? I don't know the dude, but he probably good at that. Now, the problem with this, though, is here's what happens. When you do all of this stuff, when you gather this data, right, and then you use it to infer back to the entire population, as you just told me, when we do surveys, either people really like them or do not like them, right? Yeah. So you're looking at both extremes. Everybody understand that? Is everybody going to like something? Is everybody going to dislike something? So what are we missing then when we look at those just surveys? And we're missing the people that fall in the middle. Has everybody got that? When you're looking at these extremes then, one of the things you need to be careful of with any survey, the biggest thing about surveys, or the biggest misrepresentation with surveys, is going to be the bias factor. That these are, surveys are generally very biased. And it's simply because, as you said earlier, either you really want to fill them out or you don't. So what makes a survey valid? Well, here's what valid surveys look like. They answer these four things. The first question of the answer is, what do I want to know? And your question needs to ask, your question needs to actually ask that, what do you want to know? The second thing you're going to do when you ask any survey is this. If I'm interested in Cody Johnson, right? Who are we going to ask? We're going to ask, are we just going to ask his fans? Well, we'll probably ask just his fans. Yeah, we'll probably ask just his fans. Let's just be honest. Or we're going to ask people who, I don't know who Cody Johnson is. So would you ask a person like me?
You don't know who Cody Johnson is? Oh, no. Good Lord.
So here, the next question is, are you asking the right are we asking the right people? Don't say the right group. The third question you need to have answer is, am I asking the right question? When I say is this the right question, is this the right question for the data you're trying to gather? Is this going to produce results that are going to be consistent with what I'm trying to find out? The reason we're doing it is trying to find something out now. And then the fourth thing is, once you have all this, once you have all this information, what are you going to do with it? So those questions are what we're going to try to ask when we do surveys, all right? And the reason I'm telling you is because you're going to create your own survey. You're going to answer these questions when you're creating your own surveys. So,
Wait, is it a project?
yeah, it'll be a project, kind of.
A real project or a project that's extra credit?
Like a real project. And it's going to be an actual grade project for you.
So we get to pick it?
Yeah, you're going to have more. You're going to have a week. You're going to have a week. All right, so let's talk about mistakes in sampling or bias. In case you don't know this bias is the systematic tendency. It's the systematic tendency to favor one response more than the other. And when you see the word systematic, what does that word mean, systematic? It's like a system, which means it's the opposite of another word that we use a lot in statistics. If something's not systematic, we say it is, take a guess, say it again, random. So this means that it's not random. You understand that? That means that the bias is occurring by some other source and something that's not random. I guess you could say that. So, here's what we have. We have 4 types of bias that we're going to look at. And the first is called voluntary response bias. What do you think that is? What is that? What do you think this means, voluntary response bias? What does this voluntary mean? Like they're doing it because they want to, right? So here's what happens when you create a survey and you say, who wants to participate in this survey? Guess who participates in that survey? The only people that are actually that want to participate, right? Does that make sense? So when you get your answers back, let's talk about that. People that are participating in surveys to begin with either really like it or they really dislike it, right? That makes sense? So what do you think is going to happen when you get your responses back from a volunteer survey? You're going to get extremes on both sides. Thank you. That's what I want to hear. So this one here, here's how we're going to define this. The respondents are the people taking the survey, basically. So the respondents, rather than the researcher, decide who will be included in this survey. And you just told me what was the problem with that? It's create bias because you're getting the what here? You're getting the extremes. So this is bias towards So that's biased towards the extreme. So either you have, so the only reason most people participate in these is because they have a strong feeling towards one way or the other. They have some kind of motivation like that. Yeah, like those. So convenience sampling bias. Let's talk about that next. So convenience sampling. This was the judgmental sample that we took in the random rectangles thing. And this involves using readily available subjects, or we'll say units, for the sample. So that's like, if I want to take a sample, I got a question about all the students in this class. I got a question about all the students in the school, right? What would be a convenient sample to do if I had a question for all students in the school? Just look at y'all, right? Look at all 13 people in this class and say, hey, this is the sample I'm going to take. Y'all are all represented the entire school. That makes sense? What's wrong with that?
Why would you trust us?
Some what's wrong with that? Thank you. You already said the best thing right here. Budget smart kids. What class is this? An AP class, right? So the feelings in the AP class, the student in the AP class, do you think they have the same feelings as a student in a, we'll just say a non-AP class? They're going to be different though, right? Especially about the question you asked. We call this selection bias. Selection bias is played out a lot in history. All right. Anytime you exclude a particular group from things, if you exclude entire groups, for instance, when they do online surveys are selection bias. Why? Well, because think about this. Online survey means you have to have what to actually participate in it? An internet connection. Does everybody have an internet connection? Most people do, but does everybody have it? So do you see how you would exclude an entire group from the sample? Yeah. Or you can even do like when you do like these when they used to do like the mail-in surveys and all that stuff like that. Well, in order to get mail, you'd have to have a mailbox or an address, right? Even back in the day when they had landline phones, you know what a landline is, right? Before you had a cell phone, they used to do landline surveys. What's wrong with landline surveys? Well, now a landline survey, only people that have landlines are going to get that. Most people don't have landlines anymore, right? So that's what convenience sampling is, or selection bias is. All right, now. Non-response bias. This is the bias right here. This is the bias of not getting results from everyone in the survey. Here's how that occurs. Non-response. Say, for instance, I say, do you want to serve a particular food in the school cafeteria, and I send everybody home with a letter, and it has to go to your parents. What's going to happen?
It's not going to get there.
Most people won't make it there, right?
That same thing happened to my junior.
That's what I should have said. In elementary school, that happens a lot in elementary school. When they send the letter home, to the parents, they don't get them back.
Yeah, dude, that happens.
Yeah, there you go.
And nobody did it. I would go hurt.
This last one right here, response bias, response and measurement bias. This is the type of bias that you're going to work on in your surveys. And response and measurement bias is probably one of the most typical type of bias you'll see. It's any type of bias that occurs because of influences from the survey design. I'll give you a couple examples. First one. Let me ask you a question. Don't answer it. Just gonna ask it. Don't answer it.
Okay.
All right.
Don't answer it?
Don't. Have you ever done an illegal drug?
Okay. No, that's why you do.
Don't answer it. Now, do you see how that can produce a bias? If I ask that question,
Nobody's gonna say yes.
if I ask that question, no. Let's say if one of you asked each other that though, what would happen then? You might get more truthful answers. Everybody understand that?
Yeah.
So one way to do this, one way to create a response bias is by the person asking the question. If a cop asks you, what are you gonna say?
No.
Regardless, right? Yeah, I understand that, right? So certain things depending on the person asking, what they're wearing can also influence what you're going to say. Pretty girl asks you, this is for the guys. Pretty girl asks you, do you think guys should pay for dinner on the first date? In your head, you probably thinking, nah. I think anybody should pay for the girl should pay for it, but if she's pretty and you think you got a shot with her, what are you gonna say?
Yeah.
Regardless. Unattractive, what happens now? You might give a real answer. You see how that changes though? Just based off the way somebody looks, you can change your answers. Everybody understand that? That's one way to do it. Another way is to influence the actual wording of the question. To influence the wording of the question. Two ways. Here's one way to do it. A new drug was created, right? No, it's legal. Here's how we're going to word this question the first way. If this drug is given, it will save two-thirds of the people's lives who take it. You understand that? Who take it. 2/3 of the people who take this drug will live because of this particular drug. Would you recommend giving this drug? If this drug is given, let's reword it. If this drug is given, it will kill 1/3 of the people that take it. Would you give the drug now? Why not? But it's still the same amount though, right? But I'm just saying, do you see how the wording of this question changed everything? 2/3 of them will live, which means 1/3 will do what? 1/3 will still die. It's the same question, it's just worded how? It's wording with negative connotation versus a positive connotation. You understand that? So you can influence questions like that as well. Everybody understand that? Things that we do in general also, we have what's called the halo effect. Halo effect, here's an example. When you're driving down the road, you're speeding. Cop gets behind you, what do? You're the best driver in the world, right?
Yeah.
You might have been texting before they got behind you, but as soon as they get behind you, both hands on the wheel, right? Why do you do that though? It's the cop. The cop has an influence on what you're doing. Does everybody understand that? That is a bias. That's a type of bias. That's called the halo effect. Yeah, well, I mean, you can try that. But so listen, those are different types of bias and response. The response bias is very cool. And what you're going to do, your surveys that you're going to create, you're going to create response bias in your surveys. You're going to do two surveys. One where you introduce response bias to where you have the data extremely skewed to one side, and then you're going to show me what a ballot survey looks like. One that answers these 4 questions. I got that. So you're going to it's going to be the exact same. You're going to take the exact same question like I did with the kill and the save thing. You're going to do something like that. Or what you're going to do is you're going to. I know I had one project where some people asked they had a girls. They said, the question was, do you think that girls are prettier when they wear makeup? And the first time she asked it, she had on makeup. The second time she asked it, she didn't have on makeup.
Oh, so we're actually going to ask him?
You're actually going to have to do this. Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah. Do you think girls are prettier, or do you think girls are prettier with glasses or not? And she asked it with glasses and without. Yeah. But the question has to be in such a way where you can introduce bias, and you can also take the bias out. So, all right. So here's what bias is visually. All right. So we're going to do this. Here's what bias is. Bias can be bias works like this. Here's what's going to happen with your responses. A good response is going to be precise, and it's going to be what we call unbiased. You want an unbiased response that's precise and unbiased, which means that a bad one is going to be imprecise and very biased. When you do your surveys, you're going to try to create these. And here's what it looks like. So we think of it as a bullseye. A precise, unbiased response, or a precise, unbiased survey. I'm sorry. So take this bullseye. If it's precise, the responses are going to hit the bullseye more often than not. So this is what a precise, unbiased response looks like. Does everybody understand that? If you're asking your question and it's giving you responses that are like this, that are not to one way or the other, that sit right there and they answer the question, that's precise and unbiased. Here's what a biased and precise answer looks like. Well, guess what? We're going to answer our question, and we're getting the answers that we kind of want, but they're all to one side, so they look like this. You see how you're still precise with your answer, how their answers are falling around each other?
Did we talk about like this when we're biased? We're not
Oh,
biased.
no, maybe not. I don't think so.
We did
But
this in physics.
Don't do the same graph.
it's because
I feel like
He's
we
worked
did
a lot.
not do this in physics.
this works a lot.
I was in AP for you. Yeah.
But do you understand how this is still how this is biased? Why it's biased?
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't biased, where would it land at?
In the middle.
On the middle. But it's precise because they're what?
All together.
All together, right? Does everybody understand that?
Yeah.
So, the next one we have is, well, an unbiased thing looks like this. If it's unbiased and imprecise, well, unbiased means it's still hitting around the middle, right? But they're all over the place around the middle. So you're like this. They're still shooting around the middle. You're unbiased. Your question was unbiased, but it's not giving you really anything to work with on your results. And this last one is just all over the place. Well, if you're biased and imprecise, you're still biased, right? But your answers are way over here now. They're way spread out instead of being tight together. So your job is to try to always land inside of here, to try to be precise and unbiased. When you do the survey that where you're going to create, though, you want it to be biased. You want it to be very biased and very precise. You want it like this. That's one of the questions you're going to create. You're going to create a biased and precise answer, and then you're going to create one that is unbiased and precise. You got that? So, let's look at the back. All right. The managers of a large company wish to know the percentage of employees who feel extremely satisfied to work there. The company has roughly 24,000 employees. They contacted a random sample of employees and asked them about the job satisfaction, obtaining 437 complete responses. The company's annual report states our survey shows that 87.34% of our employees are very happy working here. Comment on this claim using statistical terminology. So here's what happens. You work at a large company, right? Large companies tend to be over thousands of people big. And they send out this survey to 24,000 employees, right? Of those 24,000 employees, how many replied back?
437.
So what does that tell me right there?
There's not a lot of people who want to do this.
There's not a lot of people who want to take this thing, right? Well, the company is reporting that there's 87.34% of people are extremely happy, reporting that, right? What's the problem with that, though? Why is it biased? What kind of bias did we introduce here? Not volunteer, but it is volunteer. I'll give you that. It is volunteer because the only people that replied back are the voluntarily ones that want to reply back. But what kind of bias is more importantly? Go back to your biases. Non-response bias. This is non-response. Why non-response?
I don't know. That's your
So, thank you. You're not getting results from everybody that you sent to it in the survey. How many people we sent this to in the survey? 24,000. How many actually replied back?
437.
We're missing a lot of results. You understand that? That's like when you give the surveys to people inside the cafeteria, and guess what they do as soon as you walk past them?
Throw it away.
That's what this is right here. That's exactly what this is. This is non-response. If you have this many people if you have 24,000 employees and only 437 complete the responses, how many are we missing? We are missing. Yeah, we're missing over almost like 23,500, right? Let's say that we're missing over 23,000 surveys. We'll just say it like that. That's a large portion. Why is it? Why are they able to claim this though? Is this a true statement? It probably is a true statement, right? Because now we can go back and look at the voluntary response. People that actually replied here, why did they reply? Because they probably are happy, right? So keep that in mind. One manager suggesting having the head of each corporate division hold a meeting of their employees to ask whether they are happy on their jobs. They will ask people to raise their hands to indicate whether they are happy. What problems do you see with this plan? So the manager asks, so what kind of bias is this going to introduce? Response bias. Why is this response bias? Yeah. So the employees probably will not be honest. Will not be honest for fear of repercussions. So your manager's asking you if you're happy at your job, right? What are you going to say?
No.
You're going to say that, right? You're going to,
No, I really just straight up told him.
like the big manager,
Yeah, I told her no.
like the real manager.
I told her no, boss.
Yeah, y'all still have jobs there?
I quit.
Well, that's different. How about if you want to keep your job? Another manager proposed leaving a stack of surveys out in the employee cafeteria so people can pick them up and return them. Do you see any problems with this plan? Or if they do pick them up, what are they going to do? Throw them away. So what kind of bias are you going to get here? First off, you're probably going to get non-response, right? You also probably get voluntary response here. Is it volunteer or volunteer? Voluntary. Thank you. Yes. Last one. Each employee has an email address. One manager wants to send a survey to each employee's email and request that they fill it out. Do you see any problems with that? Well, here you're probably going to get what? If they have an email address, does that mean they have an email address at home or whatever too? Or are they always going to have access to their email address? Here we're going to say that they can have, first off, I feel like it's a lot of them. We're going to say, let's say it's selection bias. Because if you have an email address, it means you have to have what to access it? And a computer, right? So selection bias, because you have to have access to the internet and the computer. It's also going to be, just selection bias on that one. It's going to try to make it a response bias, because they probably can see who opened up. You know that you can see who opens up your emails and all that stuff too?
No, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. If you an employee email address, yeah. If you just delete them.
What?
Yeah. I told us that the other day. They say, hey.
I can talk about like regular